Hello everybody, my name is Brady and we are back with another React video, and today we are going to be checking out more geography now. I actually don't know exactly how to pronounce this place. Bahrain? I think he's doing a bit here. When I clicked on it, it seems like he's going to be doing a pronunciation bit, so I guess I'm going to be learning about that. I feel like I've said this pretty often, but I think this is the place that I've known the least about going into the video. I don't think it's even going to be the last time that I say that. The more countries we encounter, the more I'm gonna find countries that I didn't even know existed, I'm sure. That sort of stuff tends to happen. But I am very excited to see how this one goes. I don't have much to say before we get started, so let's get a little context and we'll chit chat a little bit. All right.
Bahrain, not Bahrain, not Bahrain, not Bahrain, not Bob Saget. Bahrain. You pronounce the H.
Bahrain.
And now we can begin.
Bahrain.
It's time to learn geography.
Yay! Peeps, I'm your host, Paul Barbato. We're moving on up to the east side of Saudi Arabia. We are going to cover Bahrain. But first, you know the drill. Let's dissect the flag.
Like, I'd say Andorra was one of them that I knew, like, the least about going into it, but I think this is to an even lesser degree, like, at least with Andorra, I can make some inferences, especially based on its, like, geographic location, with it being kind of sandwiched between Spain and France. Bahrain. This one I'm not sure at all.
The flag is made up of two parts, the white side and the red side, with a serrated triangle border between them. The triangles on the white serrated stripe represent the 5 pillars of Islam. The color red is supposed to represent the Kharijite sect of Islam. By the way, keep in mind the flag of Bahrain is very similar to the flag of Qatar. Yeah, that's right, that's how you pronounce it. Qatar, not Qatar, not Quater, not Bob Saget, but
I am guilty of Qatar instead of Qatar. I don't know, something about Qatar sounds better to me. I understand that it doesn't really matter what my opinion is on the pronunciation of it. It is what it is, but I always pronounced it Qatar, even if that's not necessarily correct.
Cutter, like a grass cutter, or Bonquiqui at the King Burger. When you piss her off, she becomes a cutter. However, Qatar's flag is much wider and has maroon instead of red, and has 9 points, not 5. Let's cut to the next segment.
That was a sick segue.
Not many people know where Bahrain is, and partially that's because it's kind of small. If you look at the Arabian Gulf, you'll see the big guys like Saudi Arabia, Oman, Kuwait, and then you get to the small archipelago right above Qatar, and then you realize you've reached Bahrain.
Okay, he's doing this on archipelago. Now he's doing this on purpose, trying to make me question the way I pronounce things. He must be. There's no way that's not a bit. I've never heard it pronounced archipelago. I mean, maybe I've been saying it wrong this whole time, but as long as we're going down this bit, I'm pretty sure it was archipelago.
Bahrain is made up of 33 natural islands. However, extensive land reclamation projects have actually increased the size of Bahrain by about 40 square miles, or 100 square kilometers, and has technically increased the island count to about 84 with artificially constructed islands and islets. Nonetheless, the entire country at its longest is only about 48 kilometers long and 16 kilometers wide. The largest island, Bahrain Island, makes up about 83% of the entire country's landmass and contains the country's capital, Manama, a modern-day architectural metropolis with tall and transient skyscrapers, each one almost competing with the other to show superior design and elegance. The country is divided up into 12 different
There's a lot of places like that are like in the Middle East or like kind of on the peripheral there who have like this sort of idea for a city. These very I know I'm from the United States and we have these very a lot of cities that have like this really show-offy sort of thing, and some of them not so much. Some of them are more on the minimalist side, but there's something about like these extravagant designs. I don't know, there's something about this appearance, especially when you see it lit up.
Metropolis.
Did I go back far enough? Yeah, there's something about this that I've noticed a lot in many Middle Eastern countries, and I'm curious about like the origins of this sort of display. If it really is kind of a display of modernism, or like what they value from an artistic or architectural perspective, and where initially that comes from.
Entrancing skyscrapers, each one
beautiful,
competing with the other.
It really is
superior design and elegance. The country is divided up into 12 different municipalities and 5 different governments. The vast majority of people live in the north, specifically in the capital Manama and the adjacent towns right next to it. The south government is barely populated and has less than 100,000 inhabitants. The government wants to change that though, and has been developing civil engineering projects and try to allure the population to spread throughout the outer, secluded regions of the country. For example, constructing a water park in the middle of the desert and a massive $6 billion project called the Durat Al Bahrain, the largest artificial island residence located right at the southernmost tip of the country.
Oh, that looks kind of amazing. Like shape-wise, can we just that is just fascinating. That's that feels like something out of a movie. Like the way they shape everything is so strange. I wonder what the I wonder what the property value is like when you're parked in this little island corner here. Like, I feel like a lot could potentially go wrong. I don't know what the weather's like over in that region, or if they're subject to natural disasters or whatever. I live on the East Coast in the United States, and we are subject to some natural disaster, but not like the worst situation. I'm not sure what it's like over near Saudi Arabia.
Al Bahrain, the largest artificial island residence located right at the southernmost tip of the country. The most confusing part, though, would have to be the Hawar Islands, part of the southern government. These islands are a group of islands that, although at the closest less than 2 kilometers from Qatar, were a source of lots of territorial disputes, and these islands belong to Bahrain. Basically, this is how it went down. Okay, Qatar, we'll take these 16 islands, and you can take that small little Jinan island, all right? No, thanks. It was great negotiating with you. Now, although Bahrain is an island, they do have access to Saudi Arabia by the King Fahd Causeway, built in 1986. The bridge was a huge deal in which, prior to its construction, the only way people could get to Bahrain was by a 30-minute flight or a long ferry. Since then, the two countries have never been closer together, both literally and figuratively. Now Bahrain is in the process of building another bridge between them and Qatar, currently referred to as the Friendship Bridge. Talks are still going on, but both countries seem to be excited to start up on it. But you know what I'm excited about? Now, look at the satellite map. You would think...
I mean, we've already done a lot of physical geography here. I guess a lot of it here is also artificial, I guess, in a lot of ways. A lot of this is like man-made physical geography elements that we've already gone over, which I think is especially fascinating. Just like the human will to shape the land, which that's something.
I think that Bahrain doesn't really have much to offer other than sand. I mean, it's generally flat, dry, and no forest either. However, there is a tree of life standing in the South Government all alone by itself. It's the oldest and only major tree growing in the entire area, and it's actually kind of a tourist destination. However, Bahrain, 18 countries in the world, doesn't have any rivers, no natural lakes, and it rarely ever rains here. So you would think, okay, then how do these people, like, not die from thirst? Well, yes, about 92% of the country is desert. However, they do have a few somewhat wetter and milder areas along the west coast. But where does the water come from? Well, the short answer is there's generally 2 sources. Underground water springs and, just like we studied in the Antigua and Barbuda video, desalinization plants. Now, Bahrain is lucky because it's located on the Daman Aquifer, a region that soaks up water in the porous rocks and sands and distributes that water underground through springs in multiple regions around the Gulf area, such as Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, and Bahrain being one of those regions. This is where I would like to remind you viewers that this is geography now, not geology now. Even I don't understand the phenomena behind aquifers and underwater tectonics. All you have to know is that it's a thing, it's real, and it's kind of awesome, and it's how Bahrain gets some.
Yeah, geography has this interesting relation. Like, I think a lot of the social studies have these little ways where they kind of dabble in these like sciences and things that are kind of outside of their range here and there. They have this close relationship there. Geology and geography naturally are kind of like I don't know, sibling studies in a lot of ways. They complement one another, but it's good that he acknowledges what he doesn't know. That's always it's always nice to be upfront about that stuff when you do have intellectual lacking in a certain area.
Some of their water. However, drought is a common problem for the country, and it's not uncommon for huge dust storms to engulf the entire region. However, Bahrain isn't one of those countries that kind of puts all their hopes in oil. Angola. Over the past few decades, they've diversified their revenue sources to various categories, including banking, finance, machinery, and even tourism. In fact, according to the Economic Index of Freedom, Bahrain has the freest economy in the Middle East, and especially after signing a free trade agreement with the U.S. in 2005, and in 2006, the UN cited Bahrain as the fastest growing economy in the Arab world, even passing the United Arab Emirates. Take that, Dubai,
Really?
with your world's tallest buildings and indoor skiing.
Yeah, Dubai, that I was talking about earlier, that's like another example of like that really ambitious architecture, but I do believe Dubai, it's got some downfalls. Like I've heard that their sewage system is like absolutely garbage, so it's like they have like this really nice looking city on the surface, but like underneath it is like a pile of garbage or literal crap in a lot of ways, and it's hard to manage that sort of stuff, which I assume that's going to be an interesting conversation when we get around to that. I'm sure he'll find the occasion to talk about Dubai.
Resorts. You know, I've heard it said that trading involves people. People that we'll find out about in... Now, when it comes to population, Bahrain is pretty strange because it's one of the few countries in which expatriates actually outnumber the nationals. With about 1.2 million people, Bahraini nationals only make up about 46% of the population, and expats make up the remaining 55%. The most common nationalities of expats being Indian, Bengali, Pakistani, Filipinos, and Indonesians.
So size-wise, like population-wise, this is a little bigger than the state that I live in. I live in the smallest state in the United States, and we have like around 1 million people. So that gives me a decent idea as to like the scale of people in this place.
Now, the funny thing is that although Arabic is the official language, most of the population
I could relate to their size
as a universal language in order for nationals and expats and even tourists to communicate with each other. This makes Bahrain a very English-friendly country. Now, freedom of religion is allowed. However, if one were to apply for Bahraini citizenship, it would be much easier for a Muslim, as the country is still mostly predominantly run by a Muslim parliament and a Sunni Muslim royal family. Oh yeah, that's the thing. Bahrain is a monarchy, currently under the rule of King Hamad bin Isa al-Khalifa. And it's kind of like a really new monarchy, like it started in 2002. Some people will tell you that it's a constitutional monarchy, some will tell you that it's an absolute monarchy. Here's the reason why. Hamad bin Isa comes from a long line of people known as the Al-Khalifa family, which has kind of had a dynasty over the country for 3 centuries. However, each head of state only gave themselves the title of Hakim, which means something like national caretaker, or Emir, which means chief. After his father died, Hamad bin Isa took over the role as the second Emir, as his father was the first Emir, but then 3 years later he kind of decided to change things up a little bit, and then he was the first one to officially proclaim himself as the king of Bahrain. This was taken with mixed reviews. Some liked it, some didn't like it. Ones that particularly didn't like it most were the Shia Muslims, which make up the slight majority of the country's Muslim population. Complaints about the king and how he administered national affairs started to boil. After the spring uprising in Egypt, many Bahraini citizens jumped in and things...
So, like, that's also an interesting element, having a predominantly Muslim country that is split between Sunni and Shia. Pretty closely split as well. So that actually leaves a lot of room for potential cultural conflict, and depending on how the place is governed, political conflict on those religious lines. Because I believe he said, like a second ago, that it's mostly run by Sunni Muslims, but they have this very significant Shia population. So that I could see how that might be that might leave some room for conflict.
Things got a little heated, and the country saw some of the worst clashing and protesting that it had ever seen in years. It got so bad that eventually they had to tear down the famous Pearl Monument, a common meeting spot for the protesters during the rallies. Today, however, most of the drama is kind of settled and cooled off. However, you still get some people that throw rocks here and there.
Of course.
And Bahrainis love Formula One racing. Bahrain made history in 2004
Okay.
as they opened the first Formula One Grand Prix in the Middle East, and every year they hold the event, which draws in huge international audiences. Oh, and another thing, alcohol is totally allowed in Bahrain, which is why a lot of their dry neighbors keep an eye on them and visit frequently. Neighbors we'll discuss in...
Oh yeah, that is a little different.
Bahrain is one heck of a
I wouldn't
guy.
even think about
It's kind
that.
of crazy that Dubai gets all the attention. For what it's worth, though, pretty much all the countries represented by the expats have good relations with Bahrain, like India and Pakistan and Indonesia, Malaysia and the Philippines. But when it comes to business, though, Bahrain knows how to play their cards. Turkey and the U.S. are among their top business partners, and they've even allowed the U.S.'s Fifth Fleet to station themselves in the Bahraini territory. Now, when it comes to the UK, things are kind of, well,
Some power.
let's just say Bahrain was kind of under British protectorate status for a period of time, and although the British did do
Yeah, but
some
like,
great
who
development
wasn't?
projects such as building various schools and hospitals and roads and so on, the Bahrainis were tired of the British occupation, and finally in 1971 the UK relinquished Bahrain, and to this day, despite the history, they still get along relatively well. Now, if there was ever a case of a country actually friend-zoning another country, it would have to be Bahrain and Iran. When it comes to Iran, things are kind of awkward. Iran really wants Bahrain to become a part of Iran. 2007, Hossein Shariat Madari, advisor to the Ayatollah, called for a stance to incorporate Bahrain as another province of Iran. Bahrainis were a little weirded out by this because it kind of sounded like what Saddam Hussein said about Kuwait back in the 90s. To make things worse, a lot of Bahrainis were torn between alliances. For one, the slight majority of the Muslims are Shia, so theologically they affirm Iran's view. However, a lot of the Shias are actually Arab and not Persian, which causes a whole new set of drama. And to make things even more confusing, a lot of the Sunni Muslims in Bahrain, specifically the politicians and businessmen, actually have ties to or even came from Iran, many of which actually speak Farsi at home. This causes a weird state in Bahrain in which they're kind of like, look, Iran, I'm trying really hard to be cool with you, and I like you, but you need to kind of just give me some space because you're kind of creeping me out. However, when
That would be a lot as well. Like, there is a very delicate balance that they're already trying to maintain there, and to incorporate them into Iran, while that might be good for Iran, it might be a lot of trouble to have that, because to do that level of incorporation, it would probably cause a little bit of political unrest, I would imagine, or it could open the country up to, like, all sorts of larger political conflict that might not be worth it for Iran. Though in theory it might sound good. Like, when you think of like how much this country is balancing at this stage, things could go wrong quite easily.
When it comes to their best friends, Bahrain would more or less probably consider Saudi Arabia. However, the only issue is that Saudi Arabia is kind of like the friend that doesn't quite know how to stop partying. Bahrain is kind of seen as like the Disneyland of Saudi Arabia, and every weekend tons and tons of Saudis come over to party and they kind of go a little nuts. Bahrain is kind of like, look, Saudi Arabia, I love you guys, you know, we have so much fun together, but seriously, you need to stop trashing my apartment. Oh my god, no, I'm so sorry. No, like seriously, here, just take $14 million. Just buy yourself a whole new apartment. That's not what... Okay, fine. Thank you. In conclusion, I'm not saying Dubai is so...
Saudi's able to throw so much money around. It's insane, the amount of wealth that is accumulated at the top there. So I'm sure that's like not even an exaggeration there.
But what I am saying is Bahrain is so right now. Stay tuned. Bangladesh is coming up next.
Oh, that should be fun. I've been doing a lot of these like as I've been doing some of these videos as like double ups where I do more than one at a time, and sometimes I'm doing them just one country at a time. So I'm gonna pretty much be deciding like on the spot as I record these. Today, I think I would love to learn about Bangladesh right now. So let's do it. We're in the playlist, so we're just gonna let it play through. This should be fun.
No. Oh, sorry. I'm just headbanging to Bangladesh.
It's time to learn geography.
Now! Hey peeps, I'm your host Paul Barbato. Insert intro thing because I didn't write anything. Let's dissect the flag. Now, you probably...
That is so Christmassy right there. And in theory, these colors are supposed to work very well together, but I think it would be nice to have like a neutral color breaking this stuff up.
We've seen this flag before and thought, who dipped the flag of Japan in a tub of algae? Well, it's not some green mutated version of Japan's flag, it's Bangladesh's. Essentially, the flag has a green field and red circle that is not in the center, but a little bit offset closer to the hoist side, and the reason for this is so that it looks centered when the flag is waving in the air. Green represents the fertile green.
That is important. I've judged flags in the past, but there are some flags that when they are waving, there are some flags that are just inherently, plane going overhead. There are some flags that are designed with waving in mind, and there are some flags that are designed that clearly didn't consider what they would look like when they're waving, at least didn't consider it enough, and they just don't look as good. So I suppose I want to dislike the fact that it's like slightly off center there, because that can bug me every once in a while, but I can respect the rationale.
Green interior of the land of Bangladesh, and the red represents the sun. Simple! Moving on. Interior of the land of Bangladesh, and the red...
Or the blood of the people who fought for Bangladesh, of course. It's always the blood of the martyrs.
It represents the sun. Simple! Moving on.
Easy.
Now, this is going to be really fun because Bangladesh has some of the most confusing territories on the planet. First of all, the country is located in Asia, east of India, and almost completely surrounded by India, including that narrow little Siliguri corridor, or the chicken's neck of India. A small,
that's a complicated relationship there.
With Myanmar in the southeast, and the Bay of Bengal located to the south. The capital and largest city is Dhaka, located in the lower central region, right above the Padma River and the Ganges Delta. Now, here at Geography Now, one thing we love are enclaves and exclaves, because they are delightfully confusing, and it is with great honor that I present to you the country with the second most enclaves in the entire world, Bangladesh, right after India. When you hit the north of Bangladesh in the Rangpur region, all hell breaks loose, and suddenly you see this huge mess of territory that are sprinkled around the entire border, owned and marked by each side. It gets especially messy when you go to the north of the Tista River by the Bengali town of Petgram and see a smorgasbord of over 60 enclaves and exclaves scattered in a weird random order that makes no sense.
Yeah, we talked about some of these, and we have like enclaves inside of exclaves inside of enclaves, or whatever, second layer enclaves or stuff like that, and it's crazy. I don't remember. Was that in I believe that was between Bangladesh and India. I might be mistaking it for another place, but you have like an enclave, but then you have something else like inside of it that like the amount of layers there, it's like some Inception stuff going on there.
Many of these enclaves are first order and second order enclaves, that's enclaves inside of enclaves, and the world's only third order enclave, Dahala Kagrabari 51.
Okay, yeah, we learned about that one.
Barely the size of 2 acres. This land is a piece of India within Bangladesh, within India, within Bangladesh. Talk about Inception or Landception. Dahala Kagrabari 51 is actually owned by a Bengali farmer who lives on the Bengali side, even though the land kind of belongs to India. Most of these enclaves are farmlands that were owned by families mixed in with the area long before the borders were drawn up by the British, which is why some areas don't relent their property to the other country. The Indian and Bangladeshi governments have announced their intentions to resolve the issue by swapping 162 enclaves by giving residents a choice of nationality. However, the process isn't really moving and is kind of stuck in a red tape limbo. As we'll soon find out,
it might be easier to
just is shaped heavily by the landscape and immense river systems that flow through the entire country like vital bloodstreams, fostering life to the entire region. And by soon, I mean like right now. Last time we learned about Bahrain and found out that some countries have a problem getting water. Well, Bangladesh kind of has the complete opposite problem, and they have too much water. One thing you have to understand is that Bangladesh's largest resource is their rivers. In fact, the Bengal Delta is the largest delta in the world, and the country has more transboundary rivers than anywhere else at 58. This means that they share rivers with both India and Myanmar. Altogether, Bangladesh has about 700 main rivers, the largest ones being the Padma, or better known as the Ganges in India, and the Jamuna or the Brahmaputra. This is actually pretty impressive considering that Bangladesh is only about half the size of the UK. Now, because of all the rivers and the silt deposits, natural irrigation and land cultivation is amazing. Bangladesh is an ecological gem. In fact, some of the most fertile soil in the world is found in Bangladesh, allowing them to grow thousands upon thousands of different crops, plants, and orchards. One thing they're especially known for growing is jute. I actually had no idea what jute was prior to making this video, and then I found out it's actually the stuff they use to make ropes and burlap. See? I'm just like one of you! I'm learning! Bangladesh is generally split up into different separate regions.
Are you mocking me?
Low-lying flat delta where most of the land is only at 10 meters or less above sea level, and the small hilly plains mostly in the north, northeast, and southeast by Chittagong. Speaking of Chittagong, Bangladesh has the world's longest uninterrupted beach in the world, Cox's Bazar. This place goes on and on for 75-ish miles. However, Bengalis would kind of prefer if you didn't check out the north part.
Oh, uninterrupted, duh.
Because it kind of looks a little trashy.
That makes
sense. It's a huge ship graveyard where companies all over the world like to dispose of their old ships, where the people of the region can break apart and salvage the pieces for profit. Now, Bangladesh is, of course, blessed with fertility, often...
That's a very, I hear that's a very dangerous type of work, and there's a lot of, like, exposure to, like, dangerous substances, and, like, there's a lot of, like, people are subject to get a lot of diseases when they're working in that sort of business of, like, ship repurposing. That's at least what I've heard. I don't know if it's as big of an issue here. I don't know what sort of precautions they take in Bangladesh, but I've heard some interesting stories about ship graveyards and some of the problems that people have working in those.
Villages are buried underneath mango and coconut and jackfruit trees, and beautiful forests with an abundance of flora and fauna, such as the Sundarbans, the world's largest mangrove forest, which is kind of like the last place where you can find the Bengali tiger. However, there is a problem. Bangladesh is kind of subject to terrible, terrible tropical storms almost every year, and sometimes even tornadoes. On top of that, during annual monsoon
the water
season,
is a
the rivers
problem.
get so swollen that 2/3 of Bangladesh's 64 districts typically experience flooding that causes extensive property damage, loss of communications, loss of drinking water, loss of crops, and leads to the spread of disease, which eventually leads to death. It's kind of crazy though, because for such an environmentally rich area, the country has to deal with almost equally damaging environmental challenges. Now add on top of that the fact that Bangladesh is incredibly dense in population. Let's talk about that.
See that being a bit of an issue.
Bangladesh's people have a very unique story in that they kind of had to, how can I put this? They had to fight 2 rounds for 2 separate independences, one of them from the British and the other from Pakistan. In the shortest, simplest way that I can put this without boring you and with cute little motion graphic animations so that you'll pay attention and you might actually learn something. Bangladesh was for a long time part of the British Empire. However, after the British left, they separated the region into 2 states and 3 regions, the predominantly Hindu state being India and the predominantly Muslim state being West Pakistan and East Pakistan, which is now known as modern-day Bangladesh. West Pakistan administered East Pakistan, and the capital of the time was Karachi and was also located in West Pakistan. Despite the fact that both sides were Muslim, they had very little in common both culturally and linguistically. East Pakistan eventually became furious because they felt as though they were being taken over by Pakistan, and especially angry when Pakistan tried to establish and institute Urdu as the official language, and almost nobody spoke it as everybody there spoke Bengali.
That's also, like, just geographically, just like physical space-wise, a little bit difficult to manage that sort of a relationship. This region is already kind of a cluster, you know what, so I'm not all that surprised with the issues that they clearly have to deal with, that they ended up separating, but like having to like govern a place from 2 sides of India, that sounds rather difficult.
Wars, fighting, yada yada. They gained their independence in 1971 and joined the UN. Done. Once again, let me remind you guys, this is geography now, not history now. Now, as mentioned before, Bangladesh is very dense in their population.
Geography and history, there's a lot of crossover there. Like, I wouldn't consider myself a geographer by any means, though I like it and enjoy it. I'm not good at it, but, you know, you can't fully appreciate one without having a little understanding of the other, so.
With a population of about 160 million people. In fact, if you exclude the city-states like Singapore and Hong Kong, although Hong Kong is technically under Chinese sovereignty, Bangladesh is the most densely populated country in the world and the 8th most populous. The country is predominantly Muslim, and about 86% of the adherents being Sunni, or Sufi Muslim, and about 12% are Hindu, and the remaining 2% are mostly Christian and Buddhists. Now, surprisingly, they all get along with each other pretty well, but let's find out who else Bangladesh gets along with.
Cool. It's pretty diverse.
Bangladesh tries to maintain good ties with pretty much every country in the world and doesn't really typically choose sides when it comes to major world powers. Nepal is like a tactical friend to Bangladesh, and it's mostly based on strategic agreements. Nepal does good business, and Bangladesh gives them access to the ocean. The Maldives likes to hire Bengali people for work, especially with their huge tourism sector. About 40,000 Bengali workers live in the Maldives. For Sri Lanka, the first king was said to have ancestors from Bangladesh, and the Bengali Buddhist community has sent Sri Lanka a gift from what are allegedly a few strands of Buddha's hairs and are worshipped objects on Poya Day, a Buddhist holiday, in Sri Lanka. Now, Myanmar has generally good relations with Bangladesh. However, there's a little controversy over the Rohingya people, a Muslim tribe living in the north part of Myanmar that are being attacked and persecuted by radical extremist Buddhists living in the area. That's right, you heard me. Radical extremist Buddhists. They do exist. Because
I'm not surprised by it anymore. The first time I've heard the term radical extremist Buddhist, I thought it was crazy. It's more common than one might think, and the more radicalized they are, the more and incredibly insane it feels.
Because of this, the Rohingya people have been flocking to Bangladesh as refugees, which has been causing them more and more drama as an already overpopulated and relatively poor country. The U.S. was and still is the largest aid provider for Bangladesh and is one of the top trade partners in textiles. One thing that Bangladesh is, really good at making. I mean, have you seen the tags on the back of the shirts? It might just
I have
be from
noticed
Bangladesh.
That's that is a thing. Like most of the stuff I purchase that has tags on it, it's mostly made in China. But I've noticed with a lot of clothing, Bangladesh is a very common one to see. But it's also probably even more common to see made in China. I don't know if that speaks to the quality though. Maybe some of the better stuff comes from Bangladesh. I'll have to actually pay closer attention to that.
However, Bangladesh is doing so well at developing their infrastructure that they've decreased their aid dependency from 85% in 1988 to about 2% in 2010. This is good for both countries. For the UK, yes, Bangladesh was part of the former British Empire, and even though they fought for independence and didn't like the British rule, the British culture still permeated the Bengali culture over the years, and it is very evident even today. I mean, their favorite sport is cricket, they drive on the left side of the road, and English is the second most commonly spoken language. To this day, despite the historical tension, the two countries get along just fine and have strong diplomatic ties. In terms of their best friends, though, they more or less might consider Bhutan and India. Bhutan, they only have 2 embassies in their entire country, one for India and one for Bangladesh. This is kind of huge, as we will soon find out in a future episode.
I thought I heard that there was conflict with India. Maybe I'm misinterpreting something. I thought I heard maybe that was a one-off thing and there was conflict, but not big. I don't know what I'm thinking here. Bhutan, I'm kind of surprised to hear, but we're going to be getting to Bhutan pretty soon. We're in the B's, so
how incredibly isolated Bhutan is. Bhutan was the second country to recognize Bangladesh as a state and has decided they want to invest heavily in the country's business. For India, it's funny because a predominantly Hindu country defended a Muslim country from another Muslim country. They were the first to recognize Bangladesh as a state and supported them in the war against Pakistan. However, afterwards, they kind of got into a few squabbles themselves. Apparently, they didn't realize that after drawing the borders, they had to share a lot with Bangladesh. Things started popping up like the enclave disputes and the Ganges River irrigation
so
drama,
there is conflict,
and complaints
but
that too many Bengali people were living illegally in India. However, in the end, they get along pretty well and are always there to support each other. In conclusion, Bangladesh is
that shows that sometimes things get blown up a little bit more, and this is probably some media stuff that got blown up a little bigger than I thought it. Well, a little bigger than it was in reality or something, and maybe it caused me to generalize the relationship between Bangladesh and India a little bit more, and maybe it's a little bit more complicated than I initially thought.
blessed and cursed in so many ways.
A little bit more layered.
What gets thrown at them, they always stay afloat when the flood comes, and when it dries up, they're ready to get right back up and plant those crops all over again. Stay
Sick.
tuned. Barbados is coming up next.
Oh, best flag.
Just want to say thank you to all the...
Yeah, Barbados is going to be fun. Next time, all right, that was fun. That was really cool. A couple countries I didn't know as much about as I, especially with Bangladesh. I thought I knew more, but you know, the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know as much as you thought. I suppose that's always how I end up seeing it. The more I learn, the more I realize that there's more to learn. And I guess that's why this series is so fun, because it really lets me learn about things that I don't really take the time to learn about typically. I'd be very unlikely to pick up a book on Bangladesh, but this is a nice little bite-sized thing. Alright, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'll be doing some more geography now in the near future. I'm going to be finishing up the Zulu series from Extra History pretty soon, and I'm back to a more daily upload schedule, often twice daily. I'm trying to get like one upload for the gaming stuff and one upload for the React stuff every day if I can. As long as I can keep up with it. We'll see. When school starts getting a little bit harder, I might end up having to pull back from that. But yeah, for now, I'm going to try to keep up with this. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the very near future. All right.